What is the Republican approach? The Republican approach is to terminate the Affordable Care Act and cut in the Senate some $400 billion for Medicaid, in the House a lot more. What's the result? You throw 27 million people off of health insurance. They're gone, on top of the 35 million who today have no health insurance. I heard some of my colleagues say, well, not to worry. We're going to come up with a better system. Really? How many years? When is the system coming? You had 8 years under Bush. Nobody in America has seen that system. But to simply throw 27 million people off of health insurance, please do a study. How many of those people will die? Thousands. How many will suffer? Tens of thousands. You've thrown people off of health insurance. When you end the Affordable Care Act, it means the 2.3 million young adults who now have insurance with their parents, they're gone. It means we're going back to the days where if you had cancer or diabetes and you walked into an insurance office, you couldn't get insurance for those conditions because we had the obscenity of denying people care with pre-existing conditions. We're going back to those days. That's health care. When I go back to Vermont, and I expect that every member here, when they go back to their district or their state, and you talk to young people, what they will tell you is it is harder and harder to afford to go to college. And if they're lucky enough to graduate college, they're deeply in debt. We all have. Staff, I have several members of my staff, I'm sure you do as well, who leave school over $100,000 in debt. Talk to a young doctor. She's $300,000 in debt. What we should be doing is figuring out, A, how we make college more affordable for working families, and B, how we reduce student debt, the interest rates that students have to pay. What the Republican budget does, amazingly enough, is exactly the opposite. They cut $90 billion of mandatory funding from the Pell Grant program, the major source of funding for low and moderate income young people who want to attend college. This would increase the cost of a college education for more than 8 million Americans, moving exactly in the wrong direction. In Vermont, and I expect in every state represented here, we have a child care crisis. Working families cannot afford to send their kids to child care. The Republican budget would cut Head Start very significantly, meaning that at least 110,000 fewer young children would be able to enroll in that important project. Under the Republican budgets, more than 1.9 million fewer students would receive the academic help they need under Title I program. When you get down to basics and you talk about morality, it seems to me that the least that we can do as a nation which has more income and wealth inequality than any other major country on earth, a nation in which the wealthiest people are becoming phenomenally richer while we have over 40 million people living in poverty. The very least that we could say is that nobody in America goes hungry. That, I would hope, would be the least that we could say in a civilized democratic society. What the Republican budget does is throw over 1.2 million women, infants, and young children would be denied the nutrition they need through the WIC program, an incredibly innovative and successful program which helps pregnant women and little babies. We're going to really cut that program. The Republican budget would cut food stamps by more than $125 billion. Mr. Chairman, let me just conclude by saying what the Republican budget also does, which is, again, literally but one of the problems, I got to be honest with you, that I have when I explain the Republican budget, you know what people say to me? You're being partisan. You're lying. It can't really be. When you tell them these things, we talk about taxes. Let's talk about taxes. What the Republican budget does is abolish the estate tax. Who benefits from the estate tax? The top 0.2% of the wealthiest people in this country. Fewer than 6,000 families will get a tax break of over $269 billion. Has any constituent working class person gone to any member of this committee and said, you know what I think you got to do? You really got to lower taxes for the families of billionaires. I have not heard anyone say that at all. Meanwhile, by preventing the extension of the benefits we put into the earned income tax credit and the children's tax credit, taxes will go up for working families. Lower taxes for billionaires, raise taxes for working families. This budget is a budget which is so out of tune with what the American people need or want. Poll after poll will tell you virtually every idea brought into this budget is not what the American people want. So I would hope that in the remaining days and weeks that we have, we can in fact significantly revise this budget and start doing what the American people want and not just what the billionaires of this country want.